Welcome back. So, one of my intentions and values when I show up on anything that I do is to be fully transparent. And like I said in the previous video, if you're watching these chronologically, I would have said that I'm kind of been pushed to share my story more and more. And this is what I want these next good few videos to be about. And I think a lot of times in the coaching world or whatever industry we're in, we talk a lot about specific topics, but and we talk a lot about progress and potential, but rarely do we ever really talk about the moment and the moments that force you to change in your life and in your business. And I want to talk about those moments today because those moments where the life that you've built stops working for you and you're left standing there going, what the fuck? But you're left standing there with a choice. I can keep pushing because this is how I've always built and this is what I've always known. Or you can finally face yourself. And by facing yourself, you're facing the stories, you're facing the patterns, you're facing the work that kind of needs to be done to finally meet yourself at this new level. And this episode for me is about my moment in that. And it's about the moment everything changed, the moment my identity needed to be reformed, and the moment I didn't know I needed to upgrade my operating system, but had to do, right? And that's where holistic high performance was really born from, right? And I think if you're listening to this right now, my hope with all of this video is to give you a hope, but my story allows maybe clarity to come in for you, okay, for your journey. So before HHP, before coaching, before any of this, right? I didn't realize it at the time, but I was building my entire life on proving myself. I thought I was driven. I thought I was ambitious. I thought I was hardworking. I thought I was all those things, and I was. But underneath it, there was this undercurrent that I didn't realize was there. And that undercurrent was this operating system or way of operating that was wired for one thing: prove them wrong. I couldn't even tell you now at the time who they were, but it was almost like prove them wrong, prove, because underneath that I genuinely felt not good enough. And I think all of us have heard stories in different parts of our journeys where it's been like, that won't work, or you need a real job, or you're dreaming too big, or maybe you should just settle down and do whatever everybody else does, or they'll start to throw their own assumptions and their own kind of capacity at you. And there's almost like this fight that comes in for you where you're like, fucking hell, I'll show you. And that for me was when I started my photography career. It was very much built from that lens of I'll show you, because when I was making the change from working in a family business to opening up my photography work at the time, there was almost this, when I was stepping away from that, a lot of narrative around, are you sure? Will this work? Will this give you what you need? Do you know what you need to know? Um, you know, is this a real job? Type narrative, and not just from my family, but from a lot of people around me. And I remember, if like, and I still have it now. If you tell me like you can't do something, I'm like, fucking watch me. You'll never see me more driven than when you tell me that I can't and shouldn't do something, because it's almost like I'm just like in fucking a drop of gear and I'm like, I'm gone now and I'm gonna do the thing that you tell me that I can't do. And that energy got me really far, and the energy that you've experienced with that will get you really far as well. And proving myself gave me this fire that I couldn't really find anywhere else, because it gave me momentum and ultimately it gave me results. Like, it allowed me to build a 6-figure business. And I was like, got to a point where I'm like, fucking hell, I showed you, didn't I? So proving as a fuel source was something that I didn't realize at the time. And I don't think anybody's really talking about it at the moment. And I kind of want to share more about that, because it's a topic that I talk about on a consistent basis with my clients, because I see how it impacts them as well. And when your entire identity is tied to results, so my sense of who I was, my self worth, was very much tied into my results, what I could do, what I could achieve, because it almost gave me an element and a glimpse of, oh yeah, I've proved myself there. But what happened is I always reset the post, I always reset the fucking target, and I never really fully finally arrived to what my version of shit I am enough actually looked like. And when your entire identity is tied to results, you won't know who you are without them. And that's a really scary place to be. And I found myself in that place because I was always on, I was always responsive, I was always taking on more, 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 more. I was always raising the bar. I was never resting, never settling. I felt that if I was standing still, I was going backwards. And I was never really in this state of peace. And there were moments where I tried to slow down, but my mind went straight to, you're lazy, you're falling behind, you're not achieving, what the fuck is going on? It was these like alarm bells that kind of prompted me back up to take more action at the time. And I didn't know at the time that this was burnout. I thought this was what ambition was like. I thought this was normal. And I think that's the really dangerous part of all this. I genuinely thought this was normal. I thought it was a normal part of what it meant to be ambitious and driven and always wanting to explore your potential and reach new heights. I genuinely thought this was normal. And I think there was a couple of moments that started to change everything for me, but the the thing that really changed things for me was when COVID hit. Because overnight, like that, everything I built, everything I hustled for, everything I give all of my mind, body, soul, relationships for, overnight disappeared. Gone. Like genuinely gone. No income, no security, and the very thing that I give my life to, my soul to, fucking everything to, was wiped out in an instant. I remember standing in the sitting room or sitting down, and I just remember just being like, my God, what is after happening? And I've never known stress like it. I've never known helplessness like this. I've never known powerlessness like it. And it was almost like, at one hand, there was a little bit of like, oh my God, I might get a bit of time back. But I couldn't ever even entertain that thought because I was like, my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? And this was the time where everything was still all up in the air. But what wasn't up in the air was the fact that like weddings and photography and my business couldn't actually operate. And then, as much as that wasn't able to operate, what didn't stop was the bills. What didn't stop was the shit that needed to be paid. And that alongside then kind of coming up to tax year, I got lamped with a 30 grand tax bill. I had no way to pay it. I was really shit with money at the time. I had nothing really saved, and I felt so much pressure every single day for a very long period of the kind of early days of COVID that I almost felt so much pressure I felt numb. But the pressure seemed to be the easy part of that process, because what I was also battling with was a lot of shame. I was battling with a lot of anger and panic, and it was because my deepest fear had come true. Everybody was right. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I was really stupid to believe and back myself. So I had the financial loss over here, the business loss over here, but I also had this crippling identity loss. Because everything that I had built my life around was gone. And there was nothing I could do genuinely in the early days of that could change it. And the part that I didn't say out loud at the time, and probably I'm only starting to really speak about it now, is the business collapsing almost was the easy part. how I collapsed was where the real work began. And also, as painful as it was in that, it was kind of like the moment that changed everything. Because when you feel like you've hit rock bottom and you feel like you've failed, all of a sudden this new sense of filtering comes in, and you start to see the truth really clearly. You start to see where you've been fucking around. You start to see where you've been carrying on operating in a way that hadn't been serving you. You start to see the reality of everything that you've been doing and how you've played a part in this in some way, shape, or form. Like, COVID wiping out my business was one thing, but then I was also like, but I put myself in the financial mess of not fucking saving and not like having awareness of my accounts and not doing the shit that I knew I needed to do as a business and leaving it all to last minute, and then all of a sudden been lamped with this. I had no projections at the time. I was a really good photographer, I was a really shit business person. And all of that was like tied up into so much shame and so much shame, and then I had to go about my day on a daily basis being like, I grant, yeah, COVID's great. It was fucking the genuinely the hardest but most freeing time of my life, because I think in that moment and in those moments and intertwined in all of that, because I saw the truth very clearly, I also realized something that hit me really hard, but it was something that needed to hit me in order to change me. I didn't survive depression. I didn't survive grief. I didn't survive suicide attempts to build a life that made me feel like I was dying on the inside all over again. I didn't fight my way back to living to slip into a different version of the same emptiness, the same stuckness, the same helplessness, the same powerlessness as before. I didn't do all the work on myself to then come back into the belief that shit, maybe I was broken. So for me at the time, the question wasn't really about like, how do I rebuild my business? The question was, what do I need to change now, and who do I need to become? And that was the question that changed my life, because from there I started to see a new truth and a new possibility that I never really would have entertained before. And what I will say about this is the vital thing I need to look back on and remember in that time is that as much as I had all of this fucking mess over here, the one thing that COVID afforded us all with was space and time. And I remember repeatedly saying to myself, you'll never get this time back. You're never going to get this time back. You're never going to get this time back. And those questions of, well, okay, how do I utilize this time? How do I harness this time? How do I do what I need to do so in this time I'm actually building something that gives back to me, that gets me out of this position and gets me back into aliveness and living and just back to the version of me that I had spent so long building. So I started rebuilding. And this time it wasn't from ambition, it wasn't from drive, it wasn't from proving, it wasn't from pressure. For the first time in my life, well, maybe the second time in my life was from honesty again. And when I look back on the kind of moments of my life, the pivotal moments, I'm like, hospital bed, third attempt to end my life, the filter of truth and honesty fucking slapped me in my face. This was another version of that where actually the honesty was smacking me in the face again. And I started asking myself things that I was avoiding, like, how do I actually want to live my life? What do I want my life to be like? What does freedom actually mean to me? What's my definition of it? What does success mean to me? What's my definition of it? What does success look like if it doesn't hurt, if it like is easy and it's exciting and it's giving back to me as much as I'm giving to it? What does success look like if it means I don't have to sacrifice my fucking left kidney to attain it? True story. No. I'm missing a gallbladder and appendix. My kidneys are well intact. But these questions reminded me of the questions that I asked myself on that hospital bed at that time. Just of like, now I started to see a new possibility. And I think my filter became very simple. How do I build in a way that gives me back how I want to live, not the other way around. So if my business was to enhance my life, and this is what I want my life to look like, how does my business align with that? And that's when everything shifted for me, because my energy changed, my clarity was right there, my work started to become meaningful again, and my life started to feel lighter. My standards came up, my boundaries started to come into play, my identity was starting to change. And that's where, if I look back at the origin moments of holistic high performance, holistic high performance was born there before I ever realized what it was. And it was the same promise that I was making to myself for business as the same promise I made to myself for my life, is that I never want to lose myself again. I never want to disappear again. I never want to build a life that made me disappear again and didn't give back to me and sacrificed me. So holistic high performance came from two things: my pain and my purpose. And now it's built, and I'm building a business that's built on the belief that you can be a human and you can high perform and build a business that aligns with you as well. That your state, your leadership matters just as much as the strategy that you can have. That identity is the most important asset that you'll ever have for your business, and there'll come a time where you've outgrown your identity and need to expand. That alignment is the fucking super sauce, and I've spoken about this so much around alignment. And that the biggest thing from all of this is that I realized, and this is the kind of deeper promise I made to myself, is that freedom wouldn't be something that I would experience at the end. It would be something involved in how I built from the beginning. So I wanted to live my freedom as much as I was building it. I didn't want to hold it or sacrifice it anymore. And that's the space where I built from. And that's why I built HHP. So if you're still watching this and you're like, okay, I resonate with a lot of this, what I want you to know and what I want you to take from this is that we talk about burnout a lot. Burnout isn't a workload problem. It's not a time management problem. It's not just an energy problem. It's an identity crisis. And it's what happens when the version of you that built your success is no longer the version of you that can actually take you and your business to the next level and your life. Because burnout is the wake-up call saying that something has to change. And usually what tends to happen is the biggest thing that needs to change is you realizing that you've outgrown the identity that built you. So your triggers, your exhaustion, your frustration, your failures, all of that is feedback. And the truth showing up beneath that is going to help you understand the next level of you that's needed. And that can be for you the moment everything changes, because it was the moment that everything changed for me. Was when I stopped building out of pressure and fear and proving, and I started building from that vision and alignment and from my values. So if you're feeling friction right now, maybe your moment is coming too. And maybe the questions that I ask myself are questions that you need to start asking yourself right now to prepare yourself for it. So yeah, I'll end with this. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being willing to hear the truth behind the build. And thank you for meeting me as a human. And if this episode hit home for you, I'm glad, because maybe you were meant to hear it. Maybe you're ready to hear it. Maybe it's time to hear it. And maybe the next step for you is to give yourself permission to know that actually you can build in a different way, and that you no longer have to break in order to give yourself permission to rise up to a new level, because there's another way. And all of this, the last piece I want to leave you with is you fucking deserve to feel alive. You deserve to be living as much as you're building. I wish someone told me that. So I just want to play my part in telling you.